"Colonel, get to safety. That's an order." Sergeant Fallon's voice was cracked with tension, a mix of concern and disbelief. In front of them, an armed, unstable man was screaming incoherent threats. The protocol of Cerberus Base was law, set in stone. In the event of an active threat, all personnel seek cover. Especially medical personnel. But Colonel Isolde Shaw did not seek cover. She kept moving toward the danger with a calmness that seemed to come from another world. She stopped for a single, eternal second. Without turning around, her voice reached the soldier's ears, flat, precise, as lethal as a surgeon's scalpel. "Sergeant," she said. "That protocol was written to protect non-combatants. It does not apply to me." In the next moment, the Iron Doctor, the woman everyone considered to be just a support technician, a mechanic for broken bodies, did something that would burn the legend of Cerberus Base into the minds of generations to come. But before we find out what happened in those 10 seconds that changed everything, take a moment to write in the comments where you're watching from. It's always incredible to see the map of our global community. And while you're there, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. For you, it's just a click, but for us, it's a sign that these stories matter. Now, enjoy the rest of the story. To everyone at Cerberus Base, Colonel Isolde Shaw was an almost invisible entity. For 7 long months, she had been the medical officer, a role defined by a single word: efficiency. Her movements were precise. Her gaze, behind a pair of plain glasses, analyzed everything but revealed nothing. The Special Forces candidates, men forged in fire to become the nation's elite, knew her by different nicknames. To some, she was the Iron Doctor, for her inflexible adherence to regulations. To others, like Sergeant Rhys Fallon, an exceptional talent and the natural leader of his squad, she was simply the mechanic. "I've got a microfracture in my sternum," he'd once told a teammate, walking out of the infirmary. "The mechanic says I can continue, but no heavy loads for 2 days. She knows her stuff, but don't ask me if she has a soul." This was the common perception. Isolde Shaw was a function, not a person. She arrived before anyone else, analyzed the medical risks of the day's exercises, positioned herself strategically to intervene, and at the end of the day, she filed her reports in monastic silence. She never joined in on informal conversations. She never cracked a joke. She was a ghost in uniform, whose competence was taken for granted and whose human presence was completely ignored. No one had ever asked where she came from. No one had ever looked into her past. After all, what was there to know? She was medical support. Vital, but still support. A necessary cog in the machine, but far from the beating heart of the warrior culture that defined the base. A judgment based on appearances, convenient, logical, and completely wrong. Everything changed on an ordinary Tuesday. The base received an exceptional visitor, Commander Zane Reaper Maddox, a living legend among attack helicopter pilots. A man whose reputation was built on impossible extractions and an audacity that bordered on madness. He was there to coordinate new drills with the program's commander, Major Jackson Croft. As Croft proudly showed him the facilities, Maddox nodded professionally, his sharp gaze darting everywhere. And then he saw her. Isolde Shaw was crossing the courtyard, heading for the firing range with her medical bag. Maddox froze. Dead in his tracks. His body, previously relaxed, gave an imperceptible flinch backward. It was an instinctive move, not of fear, but of someone who recognizes a force of nature and, by pure reflex, gives it space. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by an expression of shock, almost of awe. An unnatural silence fell over the small group. Major Croft, confused, followed his gaze. "Commander? Do you know our medical officer?" Maddox didn't take his eyes off Isolde's figure. His voice, normally strong and confident, was now a sliver of ice. "I've known her," he answered, speaking the words slowly. "By another name. And I can guarantee you, Major, if she's here, it's not to treat scratches." He said nothing more. He didn't have to. The weight of those words, heavy with an unspoken past, left Croft and Fallon speechless, with 1,000 questions they didn't dare to ask. The figure of the Iron Doctor had just transformed into a living enigma, a mystery even deeper and more terrifying than before. And it was at that exact moment that the base's sirens began to wail. The alarm blared, armed intruder in Sector 4. That was the training sector. The panic, however controlled, was palpable. Soldiers scrambled, following protocol, seeking cover, preparing their defenses. Everyone except one person. And here we return to our beginning. While everyone else hid, Isolde Shaw moved against the current, toward the sound of chaos. Her advance was not that of a medic rushing to help. It was that of a predator studying its prey. Every step was measured. Every glance analyzed angles, cover, and possible escape routes. The intruder appeared. A former soldier with a vacant stare, brandishing a rifle with erratic movements. He was a ticking time bomb. 10 seconds. That's all it took. As the intruder took aim, raising his weapon, she accelerated. Not a desperate sprint, but an explosion of controlled movement. She closed the distance using a lateral movement technique that minimized her profile as a target. The intruder didn't have time to adjust his aim. Upon contact, her left hand deflected the rifle barrel upward, while her right struck a pressure point on the man's neck. A sharp, precise blow. The man staggered, disoriented. An instant later, she had twisted his wrist in a lock that forced his hand open, making him drop the weapon. A low kick behind the knee sent him crumbling to the ground. Before his body even hit the floor, she was on him, immobilizing him with a technique that left no room for escape. It all happened in a terrifying silence, a dance of violence so fast and clean it seemed unreal. And then, the action that left everyone breathless. As soon as the threat was neutralized, Colonel Shaw changed. The warrior vanished, replaced by the medic. She knelt, checked the intruder's pulse, then his breathing. Her voice, broadcast over the radio, was once again the clinical, controlled one they all knew. Threat neutralized. No casualties. Subject is under control and stable. Requesting security team and a medical unit for transport. The silence in the hangar was absolute. 30 Special Forces candidates, their instructors, and a legendary pilot stood watching, frozen. It was Zane Maddox who broke the spell. His voice was low, filled with a deep admiration. "That's why," he muttered, more to himself than to the others. "That's why they called her Echo." The threats. They just vanished into the silence. From that day on, Colonel Isolde Shaw was no longer invisible. Her redemption wasn't about being forgiven for a mistake, but about breaking free from the prejudice she had endured. Major Croft integrated her into the strategic planning of every drill. She no longer just taught how to stitch a wound, but how to do it under enemy fire, not just how to treat shock, but how to use it as a psychological weapon against the adversary. She became a mentor. She taught Sergeant Fallon and the others that a warrior's true strength lies not only in their ability to destroy, but also in their ability to understand, control, and, when necessary, heal. Her calm became more feared than any shout. The story of Dr. Isolde Echo Shaw becomes more than just a barrack room tale. It becomes a symbol. A brutal and powerful lesson that echoes far beyond the walls of Cerberus base. It's not just the story of an underestimated doctor and arrogant soldiers. It's the story of how often our perception is a prison. Of how the uniform, the role, the label we stick on others blinds us, making us forget the deepest value, the substance of a person. This story teaches us a fundamental truth. True value isn't measured by the stripes on your sleeve or the role you play, but by the calm you can maintain when everything else is falling apart. And now, we want to hear your story. Have you ever been judged solely on your appearance, only to prove everyone wrong? Or perhaps you were the one who underestimated someone, discovering a world of skills you never could have imagined? Tell us about it in the comments. We read and respond to every single story. If this video moved you and you think its message deserves to be shared, leave a like and send it to anyone who needs to be reminded of this lesson. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss other legends that challenge our certainties. Your support is our fuel. Thank you for staying until the end. And remember, sometimes, the quietest people have the loudest minds and the deadliest hands. See you in the next story.